Hey there, how's it going? I don't often celebrate milestones. I made a Q&A video back when I hit 10,000 subscribers and no one really cared about it, so I figured I'd just focus on the usual content and not worry about special occasions. But over the last couple of weeks, I've achieved 2 major milestones that I never thought I would reach. First, over on twitch.tv/vimlark, where I livestream game development, art, and playtesting, I was finally accepted as a Twitch partner. It's not an easy thing to get, and I've been trying for it for a while. I know it's not as big of a deal here on YouTube, but I've been through the moon about it. Second, and more relevant to this channel, we recently passed 50,000 subscribers here on YouTube. That's such a ridiculous number, it's hard for me to even imagine it. My dad's awesome and put it into perspective like this. Angels Stadium of Anaheim, a Major League Baseball stadium, has a capacity of 45,050 people. So that means if we gathered every subscriber we had into one place, 5,000 people wouldn't be able to fit in. Basically, it's a really big number and one I never thought I'd hit. Thank you all so much. This last year has been incredible. I made a video on the highlights that you can check out if you'd like by clicking the card up top. But my community kept asking me what I was going to do for 50,000 subscribers, and I really didn't have any ideas. It was suggested that I show off all the games that I've made over the last couple of years to get myself to this point. Now, I've been making games since mid-2018, and whenever I'm asked about advice on how to get better at making games, I always say the same thing. Make small projects and make a lot of them. And it turns out, after going through all this is one piece of my own advice that I really listen to. I know I didn't get everything I've made because some files have been lost to time. And there's a few things that I'm leaving off the list because they were either too buggy to actually be called a game. I'm also not going to be including Monkeys with Guns or any other games that I currently have in development. And even with all that, it turns out I've made around 47 games since May of 2018. Now, the quality and finish level of the games will vary wildly. Some were made over the course of weeks, while others were made in just hours, if not less. But I've always tried to push myself and do something a little different just to see what I can get. After going through it, it's really cool to see several times there's more polished games that are direct influences of earlier quick ones that I made. But there's a lot of them, so we should get rolling. My initial plan was to show each game for 30 seconds and kind of talk about them, but in the end, that would result in a video that is way too long. So let's aim for that holy YouTube 10 to 15 minute mark and give each game 15 seconds. Again, some of these games are good, some are not. Some are out there in the world and you're able to play them, some are not. Links to the games that are public will be in the description, as well as the devlogs that I've made for any of them that have them. When I tell people they should be making small games, they don't all have to be good, so I wanted to show the wide variety of games that I've made in terms of quality and polish. I've also done my best to put these in chronological order, but I didn't keep great track of everything, so inevitably some things are going to be mixed up. I hope you enjoy this speedrun of my game dev journey up until this point. This is the first game I made, and like most people's first game, it's all from a YouTube tutorial. The tutorial I followed was by Mentor, who I learned most of the basics of Construct from. This was also my first time making character art and a tile map, and it really cemented my love for seeing my art move around on screen. My first game not directly from a tutorial is Don't Explode, and it reuses my first character, who I call Vim. This game is a precision platformer where the player must make it through 15 rooms before the bomb timer goes off. The game is a bit too difficult, and some of the later stage level design is pretty bad, but in the end I still love this game. The Spectacular Lefty and Righty was an idea to create a game where you need to control 2 characters at the same time. You use your right hand to control righty with the arrow keys, and your left to control lefty with WASD. It's a cute puzzle platformer, and there's a more up-to-date version that I made to go on coolmathgames.com. Rocksmacker was what helped me get back into YouTube. There were a lot of beginner Construct tutorials, but very few intermediate ones, and even fewer for creating a whole game. So I decided I would make one, and I learned just how hard it is to actually produce tutorials. While there's a lot I would do different nowadays, I'm still really proud of this one. Most people haven't seen this, but early on, I thought I would try my hand at making some mobile games. In this game, you need to keep the ball bouncing on the platform and keep it off of the saws. This game is basically finished, all except putting it out there, and I realized I just didn't enjoy making mobile games. Maybe I should look into dusting this one off soon. This is the first Game Jam game I ever made. It was made in 12 hours. I had some help on the character, enemy, and boss sprites, but I made everything else myself. I was still very inexperienced at the time, but I learned a lot grinding this out, and it kicked off my addiction for Game Jam, so it holds a special place in my heart, even though it's not very good. This was made for my first online game jam, which was held by the Construct Discord community, and I ended up making this game where you control multiple characters at the same time. Each character is controlled simultaneously from the player's inputs, but they have different paths to navigate. Compared to my first game jam, having 3 days to work on it was amazing. Pick Your Poison was my first Ludum Dare entry and my first top-down game as well. I've made a video dissecting this game, but it taught me so much about game design and player reaction. My entire concept was doomed from the start, but I'm really glad that I made it because of how much this game actually taught me. And the art wasn't half bad either. Run Robo Run was the first game I ever made for a jam that won. The restriction was that the player only got 2 buttons as inputs. I had already been playing with the idea of a platformer where the player runs all the time and you can use a button to turn them around or make them jump. And it turns out you can do quite a lot with that. I really would like to revisit this mechanic idea again in the future. Another 12-hour game jam. While it's not really remarkable or interesting, this was one of the 2 games that I made in my first ever devlog. The format for these game jams was a lot of fun, where you add different elements every hour during the jam, which is why it's a bit eclectic. Also, this is the first instance of using the lighting technique that I still use all the time. The other game for my first devlog. This was for a Game Boy themed jam, and it's a puzzle game where you control 2 characters and have to move them over a crumbling bridge. You can see early on I really liked the idea of having the player control multiple characters. This is another game that has a slightly updated version on Cool Math Games. Another 12-hour game jam with hourly scope creep. You need to get the bubble to the top of the level without popping. You can collect other bubbles to become larger, which increases your score at the end, but it also makes you more susceptible to hitting obstacles and being popped. It's cute, but kinda meh. Gather Drone was my second Ludum Dare game and the first time I ever tried the compo, which is basically a game jam on hardcore mode. 48 hours by yourself and you have to make everything. Because of that, this was the first time that I ever attempted making music for a game, and I learned that I'm not very good at it. Nightlight was made over the course of a week, and I really leaned into the lighting effect that I had recently been learning. This is an arcade-style game where the player has to run around and keep the altars lit. While the game is largely forgettable now, it was the first time that I used my squash effect on a character to make them nice and squishy. Dancer in the Dark is another 12-hour game jam game. This one's special though because the art was actually made by my daughter, who was trying out digital art for the first time. It was a really great experience as well. She did amazing. 12 hours is a long time to grind, and at 13 she toughed it out and won her first game jam. It really was a great day. Ghost Took My Camera is another game that has an updated version on Cool Math Games. I wanted to play with allowing the player to place items into the world in order to complete levels. Like having the player control multiple characters, I explored this concept in different formats several times moving forward. This game came out cute, and I'm a little bummed it's one of the games that I never made a devlog on. Another 12-hour jam, but this time I only made the art. The Tilted Shed jams used to have user-submitted words as the themes. And for this one, the words were bomb and waifu. I'm showing it here for posterity, but I'll be leaving this game in the unreleased section of my itch page. It just didn't all come together. A game jam with a restriction of text only, you say? I can make that a platformer. I have something called aphantasia, which means I don't see mental images. When I think, it's just words and dark. So this was my attempt at making a representation of exploring my memory. It's a bit strange for me, but I really enjoyed making it. This was another 12-hour game jam where I teamed up with my daughter. She couldn't stay for the whole jam this time, so she made as much art as she could, and then I copied her style to finish out the rest. It's a tapper-style game where you eat the food items off the conveyor belt and let the others fall. Obviously, it was made during the holiday time. Prudent Movement is a mouse-driven pick-up and move game that I made using the restrictions of the free version of Construct. As part of the jam, I shared the source Construct file and even made a 40-minute video walking through how to change assets and use it. Hopefully some people found it useful. Tread Carefully was a multi-round YouTuber game jam where each round a new mechanic was added. Making the devlogs for this game are when this channel really started to get some notice, so it'll always hold a special place in my heart. It was a really great experience, and as crazy as it sounds, there's actually a listing on speedruns.com for this game. That still amazes me. If the 12-hour game jams weren't enough, I've developed a love for making games in really short amounts of time. Mainly just to see what I'm capable of. And it all begins here, where I struggled to make a basic platformer in 60 minutes. The game ended up kinda meh, it's just a basic platformer, but the rush of the timer was awesome. The rush was so good that I actually did the challenge again a night or two later, this time forgoing an asset pack to just focus purely on gameplay. I've gotten a lot better at doing these sorts of challenges now, but in these early ones, it was really just a victory to finish with something playable. For the Easy Jam, the goal was to make a game that you can't lose. I tried to go for an idle clicker game, but in the end I didn't quite get what I was looking for. The game is cute, but there's way too much clicking. I really should have added an auto fire, and overall it just needs a little bit more variety, which I didn't have time for. This was the first time I attempted the 1-hour challenge live on Twitch. Having to make a game in that time frame while reading chat and engaging with the viewers was way crazier of an experience than the first time I had tried it. So the game ended up pretty basic because of that. 1 hour is already really quick without distractions. My next outing for the live 1-hour challenge turned out much better. Not visually, of course, but I brought back the idea of picking up and placing objects in the world. You have tetrominos that you must collect, place, and use to climb to the exit. And to add a little more fun, we put a timer in for some friendly competition between our community. This was the big one. After refining the pick up and place level object idea, Make the Way was one of the 20 winners for the Game Maker's Toolkit Jam 2020. In a jam that had over 5,000 entries, it still doesn't feel real that Mark Brown actually talked about mine in the video. Also, the devlog was another huge boost to this channel. Made in 3 hours live on stream, Save the Planet starts my interest into playing with circular controls. You move around the planet and use your shield to stop meteors. But having the shield active will drain your energy, so you need to pick up batteries that the planet provides. It's cute, but it feels a little clunky. I spent a few streams playing around with Unreal Engine 4. Coming from Construct, this was a huge shift for me. I wasn't able to do much, but starting with the third-person template, I was able to make my first 3D game where you climb to the top of the level by jumping off of moving platforms. If you fall off, you have to start over again, a la Getting Over It. For a while, I did a lot of these really short challenges live on stream. Ouch Jump was made in 1 hour with the concept of jumping hurts you. I was playing around with adding juice to the game, even without art, and it would have been great if I had picked any kind of decent colors. Sorry, this one's just tough to look at. Usually on stream, I do a 3-hour challenge because it fits the length a little bit better. This is the one time that I tried to make a game in 2 hours, and it wasn't really that great. I misjudged my time with completing the art, so it looks a bit of a mess. The gameplay isn't bad. You're running from an advancing wall of doom, but man is it ugly. After failing so hard on the art in the 2-hour challenge, I tried using an asset pack from itch for my next 3-hour challenge. I ended up with a tile movement game where the player needs to avoid the spikes to get through the level. I do realize now that I'm just not a fan of this type of game. I'm too impatient to sit and wait for the spikes all the time. Another 3-hour challenge using an asset pack, but this time we brought in a meme from my Twitch chat of the worst placeholder art I've ever made. This is what happens when you let a group of people vote on what you're gonna make. It's just memes as far as the eye can see. This isn't the last of it either, I'm afraid. I was lucky enough to take part in the 4 game devs jam off the same art kit with fellow YouTuber Mrs. I'm a huge fan of their work, and this was an awesome experience. The game itself is okay, and I feel like I made a really good devlog on the making of it. But this game/video is another huge reason why this channel has made it to 50k subs. Around and Back was a game I never intended to make. I had a circle pong idea kicking around in my head, so I sat down one day to just test it out and see how it could work. 12 hours later, I had a completed game and I was submitting it to the Kenny Jam. I have started porting this over to mobile and hopefully I'll be able to release it sometime in the near future. Flyer Kid was made for a game jam hosted by my buddy White Vault. I don't know why, but I dug into this game so hard and I made a top-down shooter where instead of shooting, you hand out flyers. I created art for an entire town/city and I was so happy with it that I actually made it available for everyone to use on itch if they want. Another Ludum Dare compo, 48 hours to make everything alone. This was a struggle to make, but in the end, this is one of my most pleasing looking games. It's also more of me playing with the circle controls concept, and a bit of a direct evolution from the Save the Planet game. Every Friday, I play and give feedback to other devs on their games, and one of my usual bugbears is a floaty jump. So for a 3-hour challenge, I was tasked with making a game that had a floaty jump. I think I cheated a little bit because in the end I added a dash down as well and made this little game, which I really enjoy. This is one of those challenge game ideas that I know I'm going to revisit someday. Another meme game that got a bit out of hand. Here you have to pop the hands up by pressing the button to fling them into the air and try to get them in the goal. Like Camelot, it's a silly place that we can move on from. It's also brutally hard in later levels. Save the Berries is a missile defense-inspired game, where you must run around your berry patch and save it from the fire embers falling from the sky. I made this for a jam hosted by Kindred Dev, also known here on YouTube as Michael Kutcha. It's a neat little concept, but I don't think the fun ever fully clicked. Another meme game that proves letting Twitch chat get out of hand can have strange outcomes. My friend Sympathy hosted a small game jam where the goal wasn't to make a whole game, but just a menu. I couldn't just do that, so I made a weird little escape room style game where you have to figure out how to unlock the start button to leave the menu. It's a little odd. Bouncing Problem is another 3-hour challenge game, and Mrs. actually is the one who gave the prompt of everything bounces. So I made a world where everything bounces you around like crazy and you try to reach the exit. It's silly but pretty fun. It won't show up in this list, but I've been reusing this similar idea for another jam related to Mrs. actually. My combination of 2 genres for the Mix and Game Jam, put on by the YouTuber Mix and Jam. I talked about it in the devlog, but this game had a ton of roadblocks, and the fact that it exists at all is a win for me. I think it's a neat idea, combining a wave-based shoot-'em-up with a platformer. Unfortunately, I just don't think it came out quite well. Portal Breakout Pong is another game made in 3 hours that I am 100% expanding on in the future. The idea of Pong, but the paddles are portals, is really interesting to me and makes some really fun interactions. And we've started to come full circle because each paddle is actually controlled independently by each hand. My last devlog goes into the making of this, but for my buddy Curdle Games Jam, I wanted to play with the Among Us task system drop-down mechanic. I don't love the linear nature of the game, but every other aspect I think the game came out amazing. This was my first time making pixel art at a large scale, and I learned a lot from it, especially that it takes forever. Grapplefish is my most recent game made live in 3 hours, where Twitch chat got to vote on the theme. They tied, so we had to go with 2, Underwater and Grappling Hook. So we ended up making a game where you're a sub that swims around and shoots a grappling hook to catch fish before the time limit runs out. But watch out for the mines, they take extra time away if you run into them. And the last game that I have for this video is Drop Chat. This is a Twitch integrated game that I made for a game jam where the viewers can drop pachinko balls into the game by typing a command in chat. I'll be making a full video on this soon and making the game available in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned. But it really is a lot of fun. And that is everything up to this point. It took me way longer than I thought it was going to edit this whole thing together, and I've already got more games that I need to start adding to the list. I do hope you've enjoyed this look into all the experiences I've made. It's pretty crazy looking back on all these. It really doesn't feel like I've made that many games. No lie, some I almost completely forgot about, and I'm pretty sure there's some that I actually did. It's been great and helped me grow as a designer to have been able to play around with so many different mechanics and concepts. I definitely have the types of games that I prefer and I do more often, but I do really like experimenting with different variations on similar themes. And I hope to keep this up to bring you more fun games and stories in the future. Once again, my deepest thank you to each and every one of you for subscribing and watching. And I would like to give an extra special shout out to my amazing patrons: Abishan, Daniel Martin, David Scott, Hunshrum, Nightfall, Kevin Halgau, Kormai, Liam Sorta, MLK, Matzi Makes, Nazar Salim, Salty Pretzel, Scott Hansen, Soapy Gnome, and Straight Up Gruntled. You're all awesome people, and I can't thank you enough. If you'd like to be part of the game making process live, come say hi at twitch.tv/Vimlark, or you can message me on Twitter or join the Discord with lots of other really cool people. I hope you're all healthy and safe wherever you are, and I will talk with you next time. Have a good one. Later.